Yo, what's going on, guys? Milroe here, back at it with another college football weekly podcast. What a week, specifically what a game with Georgia and Alabama. I know if you clicked on this video, you probably watched that game. What an amazing one. Instant classic. This was probably the best week of college football so far this season. Lots of upsets, close games, and real first kind of thing of lots of conference games going on. Specifically, I want to talk about the SEC, though. There were a lot of games in the SEC this week. You know, there were quite a few bye weeks for teams. With the games that we did have, there were some really interesting ones. We had Ole Miss and Kentucky. Kentucky coming off that Georgia game where they played them really well, just lost by one. And I think, you know, coming into it, I was saying, you know what, Kentucky's probably the best two-loss team in the country right now. And they showed it. They held an explosive Ole Miss offense to just 17 points at home. Really, this Ole Miss game, this game against Kentucky for Ole Miss was an absolute disaster. This is not going to be near the hardest game that they have this year, and they have a loss this early. You know, you look with all the teams, even in the SEC, let alone in the SEC, in the country, going for 12 playoff spots. You know, you say, oh, it's just one loss is okay. But this is, you know, as we see right here, Heather Dinich calls Ole Miss and Utah upsets damaging losses. This one's to a two-loss Kentucky team that is probably going to lose at least two more games this season, I feel like. Let's go to Ole Miss's schedule really quick and look at what they have left. These first four games were easy, cakewalk games. Then their first conference game is a disaster. They got at South Carolina, who, mind you, beat Kentucky earlier this year. Then they have at LSU, who's a tough team. They're starting to get things rolling. Then they got Oklahoma. That's not going to be no easy, game. At Arkansas, they'll play them tough. Georgia, that's probably a loss. At Florida, we'll see. Florida's pretty bad. And then Mississippi State. So, I could see a loss to LSU, a loss to Georgia. That's two more losses. Now you're on really fringe ground with getting into the playoff. Ole Miss, they really could not afford to lose a game like this to Kentucky, which they were at home for this one as well. LSU getting back on track, blowing out South Alabama. This one was a close one with Oklahoma and Auburn. Oklahoma's offense has just really struggled getting going, obviously, and Auburn's not a good team. So it'll be interesting to see how Oklahoma continues. Texas A&M and Arkansas in a close battle. We got Texas. Arch Manning is literally just out here acting like a starting quarterback, man. Kind of insane when you think about he could potentially be a Heisman candidate. They potentially basically have two Heisman candidates at quarterback for Texas. Hey, Quinn Ewers is going to actually, I feel like Quinn Ewers is going to have to actually really battle against Arch Manning for this starting spot. I know we've seen Steve Sarkisian say, hey, it's Quinn Ewers' spot. He'll get it back when he's ready from injury. But, hey, man, you look at what Arch Manning is doing. Texas is going to be a problem for a long time with Arch Manning. At least Arch Manning will be there at least for another year. And, I think you got to say they're the favorites even next year. We're not even talking about this year, which they could get a national championship, obviously ranked number one for this week, but we'll go over to the AP polls. Let's talk about this big game with Alabama and Georgia. Alabama came out and straight up punked Georgia right off the bat. Georgia did not know what hit them to start. And it was a great game plan from Kalen debour. You look at debour, what he did with Washington, what he was able to get out of Michael Penix and all those receivers. He saw the talent there at Washington, and they were able to make it all the way to the national championship game. You see with Kalen debour, like wherever he's gone, he has improved the team. He's gotten them to go places they haven't before. You look at Alabama, they've won national championships, yes, but with this specific young Alabama team, to see what he has done with them, he has a defense with Alabama. Their secondary was getting kind of cooked in that second half, but they did make there were interceptions on Beck, making questionable reads, and they took advantage of that in the first half. And then you have the offense, really my main point, the offense with Jalen Milroe and what he's got in the receiving core, and this prodigy Ryan Williams. Kalen DeBoer has completely unlocked this offense for Alabama. Ryan Williams is a legit prodigy. Just 17 years old, and he looks like the best receiver out there, one of the best players in college football already. An all-time game. You know, you look at the stats: 6 catches, 177 yards, 1 touchdown. You know, it wasn't like he went out there and got 4 touchdown catches, but he made a lot of big-time plays. And then you combine that with Jalen Milroe's running ability, their ability to really run the ball. You look at Alabama and Texas, I think you got to say these two are the 2 best teams in the country. You know, Ohio State, they haven't been exactly tested yet, so I think we got to hold off on Ohio State. But Texas and Alabama, who have both been tested, you got to say they are the clear number 1 and number 2 teams. They don't play each other in the regular season, but at this point, you got to say, hey, they're going to meet each other in that conference title game. I don't think you can call the season done for Georgia. Man, something about Alabama, Kirby Smart cannot get around. Even in this game where there was no Nick Saban coaching, he was there. He felt the aura of Nick Saban and was, you know, hit in the stomach. They won the second half, but it was kind of too little too late. You look at what Alabama came up with. It was 30-7 at half. Complete blitzing. And they were able to stave off the comeback. Go over to the AP rankings. Alabama has moved up to the number 1 spot. They jump Texas, interestingly enough, which, I mean, it makes sense. They beat Georgia. Whenever you beat Georgia, you gotta jump up. And at this point, I think it's a real toss-up. You know, who are you picking, Alabama or Texas? I think it's a real toss-up of maybe who has home field advantage, something like that. Those 2 teams, I think, by far are the best teams in college football right now. Then you got Ohio State and Tennessee coming in at number 4. They go to Oklahoma, get that win. I think they are still a little bit overrated. Georgia, interestingly, drops 3 spots to go to number 5. Oregon got a good win against UCLA, so they stay behind Georgia, interestingly enough. And I wanted to also talk about that Miami game, man. This is not related to the SEC, but that Miami game, hey, they should have lost. Virginia Tech got robbed, so I understand moving Miami back. Missouri had a scare as well, though these 2 teams are kind of, I would say, weak, undefeated teams. But as far as the SEC, there's still a lot of football to be played. Expanded SEC now, and you can see there's I feel like a little more parity than in the last couple years when it was Georgia and then Alabama and then everyone else. There's a lot of legit teams here that could give you know, a problem. Alabama, the new number 1 team. Ryan Williams, a legit prodigy, dude. What do you guys think down below? Do you think this is panic time for Georgia, or do you think they can really salvage their season? And do you agree with Alabama jumping Texas for that number 1 spot? If you guys are enjoying the content, make sure to subscribe. We are almost to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.